English 9 families. My name is Christina Ray, and I am your student's English 9 teacher. It's so nice to kind of virtually meet you in this virtual back to school night. So just a little bit about me, since you've entrusted your students' education to me for the term. My background in education for higher education comes from UC Davis. I got my degree there in communications with minors in psychology and sociology with an emphasis on sociology of law. I thought I wanted to be, well, many things before I ended up on social worker. Thought I wanted to be a social worker. Worked in a residential treatment facility in the non-public school. Learned in about 2 years I didn't want to be a social worker, but I did want to be working with youth. So I went back to UC Davis to get my teaching credential and my master's degree in curriculum and instruction. And then started my career as a teacher. I've been teaching, this is now my 10th year teaching. I previously taught at Rodriguez High School in Fairfield, Da Vinci Charter Academy in Davis, and this is now my 8th year at Vista del Lago High School. I absolutely love it here. I love this campus, love these students. I think this district is truly great and has a lot to offer a student, and I wear many hats in this area. I am the current English division lead. I just took on the role of advisory coordinator, which I'm loving. I'm the cheer advisor, and I'm one of the FCUSD equity leads as well. I also advise a couple clubs, so I love being involved. I love working with students. So I'm very excited to be working with your student this year. A bit about my educational philosophy. I do believe that students will learn more if they are challenged to engage in intelligent conversations with their peers about concepts that are being discussed in class. So for students who are perhaps a little bit more introverted, or as is the case for perhaps many of your students who were particularly challenged by distance learning and had a hard time engaging in those conversations through the screen, I'm really going to work with them to get more comfortable with those academic conversations. I feel like a sense of community is incredibly important so that students feel the freedom and safety to speak up in class and to share their opinions and share their thoughts and really start to embody the idea that there's no wrong answers and that there's only different answers and there's only divergent thinking. So try to get them to embrace that. I think students should be learning how to think critically about the world around them and about everything that they see and everything that they hear and everything that they read, and that they should be presented with relevant instruction, which is only going to increase their engagement. And so I really try to create a classroom environment that helps to support this educational philosophy. I do want to share the norms that your students came up with. I took a picture of them, so I'm not just staring off into the abyss, I promise. But their norms are, in Block 3 English 9, we treat each other with kindness, patience, and respect. We protect a calm and effective learning environment that honors all students' ability to focus and learn. And we are focused on our growth with a willingness to help each other succeed and thrive. I really love that last one. That one's my favorite, the willingness to help each other to succeed and thrive. I do recognize that this is a credit recovery course. The reason that I'm working with all of your students is that things perhaps didn't go as planned last year for them with distance learning. And so we are operating at a little bit of a deficit. And so helping them to understand that that deficit, first of all, is not their fault. And second of all, that even though perhaps their experience in the English classroom has left them feeling less than successful in the past, it doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. It doesn't mean that they're not strong writers. And it doesn't mean that they can't do it and that they can't achieve those higher scores on the rubric and things like that. So I'm really excited to be working with your students. The other classes that I teach here on campus are English 12 ERWC, which is, of course, developed by the CSU, and you'll see once I start going through these units here, the preview of the first one is on the screen now. So I teach that with the 12th graders. I also used to teach beginning composition, but I don't have it this year because I have this class instead. This was actually a class that I had brought up as something that I thought we should teach, and I said I would like to teach it. But I also teach Honors English 9. And so I'm using a lot of those same strategies that I use in Honors English 9 with your sophomores, and making sure to bring them up to that level to prepare them for what they're going to be seeing next term when they are in English 10. So really just encouraging them and encouraging you as their parents or guardians that they'll be ready. And even if they've come into my classroom feeling less than successful, My goal is always to have every single student leave my classroom with confidence, feeling like they are successful in English, like they are successful in writing, and that they are able to do whatever it is that they set their mind to when it comes to their education. So there's a few units we're going to be tackling in order to achieve these goals. The first takes that school philosophy right on its head. It's called What's Wrong with Schools? We're focusing on argumentative writing with a focus on effective application of strategies and devices to build those rhetorical appeals of ethos, pathos, and logos. The summative here is an argumentative essay. We're just going to focus really on claim evidence analysis for this first one, as opposed to all the targets that they've seen in the past in their English classes. Nothing repetitive from English 9 as far as the units that we're doing, the English 9 they had last year. We then move into a unit called The Danger of a Single Story. This is the only full-length text that we'll be reading this term. We're going to be reading Ishmael Beah's memoir, A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. We'll be focusing on motif analysis, thematic analysis. So some of the skills that they got when they read To Kill a Mockingbird, however, looking at a very different text with that and taking a very different approach, taking more of the Honors 9 approach to these skills. I teach it in a very different way. I think that they're going to really enjoy this text and this unit. I love it. It's a very powerful, impactful book. And the summative here, they'll write a thematic analysis essay. We then move into a unit called Juvenile Justice. This is modified from that CSU ERWC curriculum. It's a research-based exploration of the U.S. juvenile justice system, and they will be focusing in on case studies, so getting into that more expository nonfiction side of things. And their summative here will be discussion-based, so we're going to get more comfortable with having those classroom conversations, engaging in discussion with our peers, and so the summative will be a Socratic seminar. From there, we'll move into a unit I'm calling Texts on Trial. It's an exploration of multiple interpretations of Shirley Jackson's short story, The Lottery. We'll read the short story. We will also read the one-act play adaptation and watch the one-act play adaptation, super short, but super interesting, as an introduction to the topic of banned books and banned literature, and that will be followed by a collaborative examination of a banned text that they'll present through digital presentation. I do want to assure you that even when they're working collaboratively on this, they are assessed individually, so they are responsible for their own piece of it. They'll each have different roles, and so based upon that role, that's what their assessment and their rubric will look like. Group work doesn't mean group grade. And then we are moving into another unit. This is a new one from the CSU ERWC that is designed for 9th and 10th grade students, called Remembering Injustice. It's a critical examination of how incidents of injustice are remembered, followed by a research-based exploration into a historical or modern injustice. So we'll be doing quite a bit of work with really developing and fine-tuning our research skills. We'll be working with our librarian, Mrs. Arata, at getting more familiar with the research tools and databases that our library website has available to us here at Vista, which will really help them when it comes to English 10 next term. And the summative here, I know this one scares many of them just a little bit, but I am going to prepare them for it, is a research-based persuasive speech. They will have the option to record their speech ahead of time. They'll have the option to give that speech in front of the class. That's what I'm going to encourage them to do as much as possible. They will also have the option to record just the audio of the speech. I do remind them that vocal inflection is a strategy and is a rhetorical device that can be used to engage an audience. They will also have the option to just submit the text and then annotate that text of what those strategies would be, of here's where I'll slow down and here's why, and here's where I'd get a little bit louder, and here's the impact I'm going for, if it truly is a bit too much anxiety produced of the idea of getting up or recording or anything like that. The goal is not to give your students anxiety, it's to prepare them to speak. But if they can understand how something would persuade an audience, then that's what I'm going for. As far as the grading, it's the same grade scale that was used last year. 70% of their total grade will be summative assessments. That's assessments of learning. And 30% is the formative assessments. Those are the assessments for learning. It's like the practice to get to that summative. Formative work is not going to drive their grade, but it does help you the student, me, to know kind of where they're at and where we need to get them to before that summative. So formative assessments help to inform intervention. They help to inform any reteaching that I do in class. They let me know what mini lessons I need to create. That's where they get their feedback. All the feedback comes on the formative assessments. When it comes to summatives, the feedback is the rubric, because they've received a wealth of feedback on formative assessment as well as on practice activities. I give feedback on practice even when it's not worth a grade. Formative work, however, must be submitted before the summative due date in order to be considered. So I do remind them of that, and so please keep that in mind as well. Grades are meant to communicate information about their achievement. They're meant to provide information for them to self-evaluate. I do have them consistently evaluate themselves using our rubrics. We break those rubrics down in their language. We develop rubric language together, so they're always looking at where they are. The first activity that we did self-assessment on, I was really impressed with how self-aware your students are with where they're at. And honestly, they were doing pretty well with those rhetorical précis that we tackled today. Ask them to tell you about it. I was very impressed. Grades are used to select, identify, and group students for educational pathways or programs. They're also used at Vista to identify students for intervention. Intervention is not punishment. It is support to assure that all students succeed. They are incentives. Grades absolutely do provide incentives for students to learn, as much as I wish that they weren't an incentive. I know that they are. And they're also used to evaluate the effectiveness of instructional programs. I know if I taught something and everyone's at that 2 level, it was probably a me issue as opposed to every student didn't get it. Something probably went wrong in the instruction or in the curriculum itself. So also another purpose of grades. And in our department, we use the 6-point scale. So as opposed to having 100 different levels of proficiency, and even more when you get to the 0.5s and the 0.25s that you sometimes see, we have 6 levels of proficiency that are used to describe learning. We're really working on getting students to talk not about themselves by percentages or numbers, but about their learning and how they are doing in their learning and approaching those skills and standards. So you'll see the numbers 1 through 6 in PowerSchool. The teacher interpretation of those is from unsatisfactory to exemplary. Your students have developed their own language for those skills as well, as you can see here. You'll note that there are a few different categories in the gradebook, the formative, the summative that we already touched on, and there's a third category that's called ungraded. You'll see scores go in for ungraded as well. However, they do not affect the student's grade. It's just to track how they're doing on progression of skills. So for example, if you see ungraded rhetorical précis and your student was in that approaching range, or they were IT, as they call it, perhaps on the formative they've then improved and now they're at that proficient range, and then we'll see where they get to that summative. It just helps me to know where that first benchmark is, where they're not yet being scored in a way that's going to affect their grade. However, they still got that feedback. So that's what that ungraded category is. Sometimes you'll also see things just go in as check marks if they're collected. Things like the letter to me, course expectations, etc. As far as where to find more information, in case you'd like more, I'm pretty wordy, so I've been talking at you for a while now. But the Vista website has my course expectations. I also have a link on that Vista website to my Google site. I'll upload things on the Google site as we do them in class. Rubrics, for example. I'll also probably put some photos of student things that are on the wall up on the Google site throughout the term. Google Classroom is a place that's really just for the students. I know that there's an ability for parents to somehow have a parent guardian join, but it's really it's a student hub there. There's assignments, activities, digital collaboration. If your student is quarantined this year, all of the agendas are posted on Google Classroom. Slideshows aren't a mystery in my classroom. If they ever need to review something or they missed something, they can always go on Classroom and find the agenda, see what they missed. If they want to take notes based off that agenda after class to help them process what happened that day, they can access it there. I'll also, as we go through, I have a bank of mini lessons and videos from when we were in distance learning. I'll be adding those to Google Classroom as they pertain to the things that we're learning, even though they're not fresh and from this year, but just as a resource that might help. Those things will pop on Google Classroom as they pertain to our work as well. So if your students ever quarantine, I'm certainly here to work with them, to help them however possible, but Google Classroom will certainly be helpful as well. Grades will be updated frequently, so just keep in mind the difference between that formative 30%, summative 70%, ungraded 0%, but still really important to see where a student started in a skill. If you ever need to contact me, email is absolutely the easiest, possibly even the only way to reach me. My email is cray@fcusd.org. Feel free to shoot me an email. That email can also be found on the Vista website, so just to show you where things can be found there. It's under Teacher Websites, and then you search me by my name, Christina Ray. And then this Back to School Night presentation will be linked right here. Ooh. And course expectations on the sidebar here where it says 2021-2022 course expectations, go ahead, click that. And then select the English 9 course expectations. If you could all do me a huge favor, read through these course expectations. Some of it will be a little redundant of what I've said here, so feel free to just kind of brush through the curriculum stuff. Unless you want to review it again, then have at it. But some policies and things, and then I ask that you please, at the bottom where it says parent guardian link, if you could please click on that link and then complete the signature page for me. What I'd love here is an email that I can reach you at. Sometimes the emails in PowerSchool are not up to date, so also not a bad reminder to update your email in PowerSchool if you need to, so other teachers can get a hold of you in case they don't do this. Your name, your student's name, contact info that you can best be reached at, or how you would prefer for me to reach out to you if I need to reach out to you. If you have any questions or concerns about this course that I can help to address, and if there's just anything that you'd like me to know about your child that you feel would help me to best support them in this class. I really do believe that absolutely every student can and will succeed, and your student can and will succeed in my classroom. Please trust that they are in good hands. I will make sure that they pass. I don't let my students fail. I really don't. It's just not in my nature. And so I'm going to be working with them very closely. If I need to, I'll be pulling them into intervention and into flex time to work with them. It's not punishment. It's support. It's making sure that your student and I can work together to make sure that they get the best possible education from me, and that I can pull out everything I can from my bag of tricks to help make sure that they're walking out of this classroom feeling so much more confident than they did when they walked in on that first day. All right, please reach out to me if you have any questions. And I look forward to working with your students for the rest of the year. Bye.